Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Cauldron. So today we're going to be talking about shadow work and how we can use our tarot to do shadow work. First of all, people are going to look at shadow work differently. A lot of people, when they talk about shadow work and when they're explaining shadow work, they seem to be looking at it more from the perspective of the dark side of ourselves, the things that we try to squash, the traumas that we try to push down, unresolved issues within ourselves. I don't look at shadow work in that way. I really look at shadow work as a way to communicate with our soul. I'm a deeply spiritual person and I'm very connected as far as nature, and energy work is where I spent the majority of my time. I don't generally use a lot of different tools. And so when I think of soul, I think of it is that connection to the great energy. It's that connection to the divine. It's that connection to the energy web that connects all of us together. It's all knowledge and understanding. And if you're a gamer, like my husband, it's kind of easy to equate it to like your soul as your gamer person, and this physical body on this plane is more like your avatar. There's all kinds of ways to think about it and explain it. And if you haven't watched the energy video, I highly suggest you go and do that. I'll put it up here. That way you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about when I talk about the energy and soul. When I started thinking that I needed to get back to my spirituality, I was doing a lot of work in my neighborhood and for people. And so I was pouring everything into that and finding myself very drained because I wasn't pouring anything into my spiritual life. And that's really important to me. And so I started taking the time to do that again and to connect with my spiritual side. And when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do, for some reason tarot just popped in my head. And I was like, I think I really want a tarot deck. And so I started looking through all the different decks and I found these, and it's Dreams of Gaia. I'll put it up here so you can see, and I'll show you some of the different cards. But this deck immediately caught my attention. One, it's Gaia, and I'm very naturey in my practice. I'm very naturey in my spirituality, and so that just really fit. And instead of like cups and wands and swords, it's earth, air, fire, water. And so it's very elemental, it's very nature tied. The artwork is absolutely incredible. And I bonded with this deck almost immediately. It has been a really fantastic tool, and I primarily use it for what I consider shadow work or the conversation with my soul. And there's several ways that I do that. When I'm trying to see a situation differently or get a different perspective, or to understand something, or to find out what it is that's blocking me when I don't know, I will ask it questions. And so, like, one of the things, you can make up questions specifically to what you're looking for and make your own spread based upon that. Or you don't even have to have a spread. You can just ask a question, lay a card, ask a question, lay a card. Another way, you can find them all over the place. They're on Pinterest, they're on Instagram. You can just Google shadow tarot or tarot shadow work, anything like that. Go to the images section and you're going to have like tons of different spreads and questions and things that you can look at and get ideas or even ways to get started. If you do not have your own tarot deck, but this is something that really interests you and you don't have the money to go and get your own, I'm going to put down in the description again different sites that show you how to take a regular plain deck of cards and turn them into tarot, how to print your own tarot, how to make your own tarot. If you are a nature person, I am super nature bound, you're really highly into energy work, I would really, really suggest the Dreams of Gaia deck. It is just a really awesome deck. And if you can't buy it, then maybe there's a way that you can mold after it with using the elements. So an example of one of the set of questions that I would ask. So the first card I would draw would be Message from My Shadow. What is my soul trying to tell me? The second one would be energy surrounding it. So what energy is surrounding this message? What do I need to do now would be the third card. Fourth card, what are the challenges? What is blocking me? What am I not seeing? What do I need to understand better? Or what do I already know, but this is what needs to happen next? And then I'll draw a guide, because you always want a guide. If you're asking for a challenge, you always want a way to help guide you through that challenge, and in a perspective that will make sense, but also keep you focused on getting through that challenge. And then expression. So that's one example. If you have a specific situation that you really need to work through or you need to understand, it doesn't just have to be a self situation, just something you are going through that you don't understand why. Maybe it's a repetitive. Why does this specific thing keep happening? Or perhaps it's a situation and you know some of the pieces to it, but you're not seeing something. You feel like you're missing something and you need a different perspective. It's a really good thing to ask your soul and see if it can give you some different advice. Sometimes I will also use it just with my standard spread, and I'll put that up here so you can see it. And I generally do that when I'm asking, make sure that I'm on the right track, I'm not forgetting anything. I'm just basically looking at where I am right now on my path and the things that I need to be focusing on and what the different parts are telling me. I also keep a journal. I keep a journal of all of my readings, and I write down the date so I can keep track. I write down the question that I'm asking. I write down if it's like a list of questions. Sometimes it's just specific questions like this one, Message from My Shadow. And so I'll write down, each question and then what card that I get. And then at the end, as I sit and look over and go through, I will start writing down my interpretation as well. This helps me in several ways. One, it makes it so I can go back and review things. Secondly, it's kind of like a book of shadows for my tarot. It's where I can see what I have done, how far I've come, what cards have changed. So it's just a really good tool. And it's also a good tool in being able to reflect back. So say I do a reading in the morning and maybe in the evening, I just want to go back and reflect on what the morning one was. Did I see anything that day? Did I get the message? Was I working through those challenges? Was I being active within my practice and my spirituality? Now, there's a lot of different ways to shuffle when you talk about tarot. And since this is our first real official tarot video, I wanted to cover a few things about how I do it. You may do it differently, or you may find things that work for you better, or there's all kinds of tips and hints out there. The biggest thing is whatever you do, make sure that it's working for you. Make sure that it resonates with you, it feels right. And that's the most important thing. Now I know some people, they will just, shuffle a few times, cut the deck, maybe shuffle a little bit more, and then they just put all the cards out on their spread, and they're done. I don't do it that way. To me, I like to go individually, card by card, so I can really be thinking about the specific position or the specific question that that card is supposed to be answering. And while I do that, I'm drawing an energy, I'm pulling it down through my arms, and I'm putting it into my cards. And I feel that that really helps ground and center me and connects me to my soul, because I can feel that difference there. I can feel that connection at one of its strongest points when I'm super focused on it. So what I do is I will meditate for about a minute or so while I just shuffle cards. I'm not drawing anything, I'm just shuffling. Sometimes you want music for this, sometimes you won't. I really highly encourage music with no words. That's kind of important to me, just because I find the words to be too distracting. If it's just a simple beat, it's much easier to just kind of feel it, but not really focus on it, where it's just kind of that background vibration. And then I will think about my first question or the first position. So if I was doing my spread, I would be doing core first, because that's how I start. So it's the core of the question or the reading itself. And so I'll just shuffle until either a card jumps out at me, a card resonates, or I get this feeling. And it's not, generally it's something that, has stuck out of the deck a little, and there's just a feeling behind it. I'm like, yep, that's it. Sometimes they literally jump out of the deck. It really just kind of depends. The thing with it though, the way that I do it and the questions I've been asking and the spreads that I do, I have not had a reading yet that didn't really resonate and make sense, which is pretty incredible, I think. There's been a couple of times where I've gotten cards where they were in a certain position and I didn't understand exactly what it was trying to tell me. And so I had to think about that a little bit. I had to reflect on it, and then it started to show itself and I started to understand. I don't draw helper cards near as much. I see a lot of people, when they get one that's like that, they immediately go to drawing a helper card. I personally like to reflect on the cards and reflect on the reading as a whole and the energy surrounding that to find the solution, if at all possible. I will use helper cards if I need to, but I generally try to give it a little bit of time. If you have a card that comes up quite often, or say you've been doing shadow work for a week or two and you've been pretty consistent every day doing something with your shadow work, and this card keeps coming up and keeps coming up and keeps coming up, and you're really, you're hitting it, you're drawn to it, you know there's something there, but maybe you're just not fully understanding or getting it, then do a separate spread just on that. Pull that specific card out and put it down face up in front of you and focus on that card and focus on, what is behind this? What is the energy behind this? And you can either do a list of questions based upon what you're trying to understand about this card, or you do a general spread about the card, or maybe you're just going to go with flow, and so you're going to just draw 1 or 2 or 3 cards to give you a better idea of why it keeps showing up. What is it that it is trying to tell you? Shadow work isn't always easy. Sometimes it's not easy to get started. If you are using shadow work to heal past hurts, or you're using it to understand and get past traumas, understand it's going to be a lot harder. If you're using it to deal with things about yourself that you don't like, and to understand them better and what you can do to resolve those or accept them or change them, then it's going to be a little bit harder work. Sometimes it is going to tell you things you don't want to hear. And be prepared for that. It's okay. This is a conversation between you and your soul. This is what you need to do in order to move farther down on your path. And it doesn't matter what your spirituality is. It doesn't matter if you are pagan or atheist or Christian. It doesn't matter. It's still the same conversation. It's still the same tool that you're using. And it's really about loving all of ourselves. The good things about us and the bad things about us. And they're not really bad, they're just parts of us. Society tells us a lot of things that are bad, and our religions tell us things that are bad, but it doesn't necessarily make them bad things. They're people that are manipulators, and I've known quite a few. You can use that for really bad aims, or you can use that skill for something good. It's about choice. You are choosing how you use that skill. Empathy can be used in really good ways, and it can be used in really bad ways. Helping other people can be done in really good ways that benefit them and help them to move past whatever they're in. Or they can be done in really bad ways that end up making that person even more dependent on somebody else. It's all about choice. It's how we choose to use these things. It's how we choose to view these things. So I'm really not comfortable with saying the bad parts of you, but they're probably the parts of you that you try to suppress or put down, squash within yourself because you feel that they're unacceptable. And again, that's choice. Everything about your spirituality, everything about your shadow work, everything about your craft, all of this is about choice. It's the choices that we make that determine on where we go, what our future is. So that's something to think about as you're going through this. And understand, if you're looking for specific futures, you're probably not going to get that from anything, not from tarot, not from a psychic, for this simple fact that these are possible futures. If you do this step and this step and this step, or you make this choice versus this choice, future is not set. It's based upon the choices that we make now. Everything about energy, intention, and manifestation, there's action in there. You have to do the work. Nobody can do it for you. They can guide you, they can help you, they can give you resources, but it's up to you to move your spirituality forward. It's up to you to move your craft forward. And some people are just into the craft, but don't have any spiritual connections. They are more bound by science, and that's okay. You have people like me that are deeply spiritual, and the craft is a part of my practice of my spirituality. All in all though, using tarot for shadow work has changed me dramatically. I had gotten off my spiritual path a little bit because I was doing so much volunteer work in my neighborhood and with people around me and helping them and working on making this a better place for everyone and working with the youth in our neighborhood, that I kind of put myself, including my spirituality, on the back burner. It's not that it was ever gone, but I wasn't really being an active role on my path, and I wasn't moving myself forward. And so about 8 months or so ago, I decided that had to end. I needed to get back to my spirituality in order to continue doing the work that I was doing. Shadow work is going to be very individual. You are going to need to figure out how to do it that it works for you. Some people don't even use tarot. They do journaling, they do dream interpretation, meditation. I personally like tarot because it's very interactive and I'm just really enjoying the conversation. I do highly advise that no matter what route you take to do shadow work, that you keep some type of log or a journal of your journey so you can go back and reflect on it and you can go back and look at it. Also, be prepared. You're not always going to like what the cards are going to tell you or what your soul is telling you. Sometimes it's going to be hard lessons. Sometimes there are things that you already know, but you just don't want to face, or you don't want to accept that that is part of you, but it's still part of you. And so instead of suppressing that, instead of trying to kill it off and place it in a box and put it at the bottom of the closet and kick it a few times, you know, maybe trying to embrace that and finding ways to work through it to where it becomes a benefit to you instead of a detriment. A way that it's going to help move you forward versus holding you back. It's tough work. Shadow work is hard. You know, if it was easy, then we wouldn't really need to do it. Shadow work is tough work. It is hard, but it is so invaluable. At least in my opinion. This has been probably one of the best things I have done. It has exponentially moved me forward in my spiritual growth. The growth that I've had over the last 8 months or so, not just with the tarot, it's overall growth, but this has been a really key factor. This conversation with my soul is a really key factor to it. I have not experienced this type of massive growth since I was early 20s. I mean, quite a long time ago. And so it's really amazing. And it's amazing how spot on it is and how in depth it goes. And I really do see that conversation. I see the back and forth, and it's not just in my tarot, because now I'm having that conversation. I'm seeing things in my dreams that I'm remembering. I'm coming across, you know, papers or lectures or people talking about certain topics, and I'm like, hey, you know, we were just talking about that yesterday, and you know, me and my husband, we had that conversation, and it's only furthering us along, and we're looking at sciences behind all of these things, which is really cool. And we've been diving into the science of the soul, especially since this is what I feel that I'm doing. I feel I am having a conversation with my soul, and my soul is that direct link to that whole web of energy that links all of us together. So no matter how you decide to do shadow work, it is very, very important work, especially if you feel stuck, or if you just don't feel whole or complete yet. Or maybe there's things that you know that you need to work on, you're just not quite sure what you're supposed to be doing. Give it a shot. Give it some time, give it a shot, see how you feel about it. Like I said, you can do it different ways. I just really love the tarot for this. It's been an awesome tool. And it's a much easier way for me to have a conversation back and forth, especially when I'm looking for specific things or specific questions. So as always, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them below, or you can contact me directly. Know that all this information, this is my perspective. Your perspective may be different, and that's awesome. You do you. These are my experiences, and they are going to feel maybe different than yours, and that's great, because we're different people. So keep working on it, keep trying. If you haven't gone through the other videos for this month, go ahead and do that. Next week we'll get into a spell jar, because I know some of you have been asking about spell jars and how do you put it together, what are the kinds of things that you put in there. And so we're actually going to put one together. And I will show you exactly what I'm using and exactly what I am doing and the exact purpose of that spell jar. So as always, keep going, keep growing. See you next time.